My colleagues struggle with reporting in daily meetings. Saying you did testing and you do testing or only talking about bugs gives a bad impression. How should this be done better?
Yeah. There's this podcast that I like called Judge John Hodgman, and something that he repeats on that show all the time when he's interviewing people about their disputes is that specificity is the soul of narrative.
Is the soul of what?
The soul of narrative.
Ah, okay.
So,
okay.
So being specific tells a good story.
Yeah.
That's what I would encourage your testers to do, is tell more specifics, right? Say whether it's the browser or the build version or what they checked or right, like what permissions they had to do it. Tell more about what is happening, because developers love telling you that you're wrong, right? You are so often in the testing role, the one saying that something is wrong and pointing out the flaw. But I bet you if you list, right, like 5 or 6 things that you did, a developer will probably ask, why didn't you do this other thing? Or you spent a lot of time doing that, you shouldn't have been doing that, right? I would expect that providing more details will allow you to get more feedback on your testing. It's also good information, or like interesting to find out if they don't seem to be asking for that information right now, right? Showing up and saying, test it, or like writing on a Jira story is usually how it happens on our team, but like test okay, and then it just closes and nobody asks any other questions and nobody is thinking about how you spent your time and what you did. That's curious, because that's not how I feel about the developers' work. Right? I would hope that that you get that practice of sharing, and at least for yourself, right? The act of test reporting then allows you to think about how you did your work, and in that way you can become better.
Do you, when I read this question, it makes me think about, I'm not sure if this is what Marit meant, but it makes me think about all the other stuff that you and I would do as a part of our job, but that doesn't necessarily fall under the classic testing definition about bugs. So do you talk about those things in your daily meetings as well? And if you've worked with testers who don't, how do you help them do that stuff?
Yeah.
And and get specific about it. So it's like, oh, okay, I paired on this thing, or I went and tried to create this environment, or went and investigated this technology so that I could test the thing.
I would say report on all of that stuff that you're doing to prepare for your testing or follow up that you did afterwards, right? Okay. Maybe you spent 10 minutes testing and then you spent an hour talking to the other team about how they were blocking you, or about how you found a bug in their thing. It's not really your thing. Your developers don't care, but do show up to stand up and say, I spent an hour reporting this bug to the other team. Right. Or dealing with this setup issue, right? I didn't have access to the system and that took me 2 hours, because maybe they had the same problem before. Maybe they have like a trick for you or some better way to do it, right? If you are not sharing your struggles that way, you're just going to be alone and suffering. You can at least be together and suffering.
Yeah. Right, exactly. So get specific, because that helps the narrative, and share everything that you did, like everything, not just the classic, the real obvious testing stuff. But
yeah, I'm hesitating at everything, because I also getting too detailed, people will zone out, or like I implore you, I advise you to hold their attention as well, right? Realize what will be either interesting for someone else, or the right level of detail for a large group versus more details in a one-on-one setting, right? Enough to pique their interest and get them on a call separately, right? You don't want it depends how big your team is too. Yeah. But I can imagine if you're on a call with 10 people, right, like explaining for even just 3 minutes at a stand-up, right, how your setup was a problem. Yeah, maybe that's not the best one.
Makes sense. Awesome question. Thank you very much, Marit.